Good evening. My name is Ken Mejia-Beal, and I am the chair of the Democratic Party of DuPage County. And tonight, we are having our Earth Day Forum. And our specific topic of conversation will be climate, why it's important, why we have to focus on it, and what we can do to improve it. So I've invited some of the, in my opinion, my humble opinion, some of the greatest minds surrounding this topic that I know in DuPage County. So I want to let our panelists introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about themselves and why they're here. I'm going to start off with our Connie Schmidt.
Hi, everybody. My name is Connie Schmidt. I live in Warrenville. I've been a DuPage County resident for 42 years now. And very early on, I became involved with the Sierra Club. There was a local issue, and we asked for some help because we were worried about power lines along my Prairie path. And Sierra Club came and helped us and spoke at the county board with us. And I decided, well, this is a good group. It's local and it's global. And so I became very involved with Sierra Club. And I'm the chair for our local Sierra Club now. And I have been the chair for the state as well. And I've worked on national issues. So all levels. And it's a thrill to be here with you all. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Connie. And next we have County Board Member Paula Deacon Garcia.
Thanks, Ken. Again, I am Paula Deacon Garcia. I am the DuPage County Board Member from District 2. One of my jobs on the county board is I'm Vice Chair of the Environmental Committee. And with that, my first term, I wasn't on the committee, but I was actually pushing very hard to get EV fleet, EV stations into the county. And now I'm also the chair of the Public Works Committee, and I'm making sure that there's sustainable changes in all the buildings that are being built right now. So I'm very excited by the changes that are happening at the county.
Thank you. And next we have Susan Francis.
Hi, everybody. I am humbled to be with this group. Thanks for the praise, Ken. I started the DuPage Dems Green Team. I don't remember if it was 2018 or 2019 before COVID. We don't usually do individual topics. We're about candidates. But in talking to Cynthia, who was the chair at the time, every issue occurs within this issue. And we're at such a crisis time that it's so important to focus on it. And my goal really was to reach we have a huge number of people in the DPDC newsletter, most of whom, I think all of whom, probably have their hearts in the right place, but are perhaps not as well as informed as a lot of folks on this panel. And there's often an argument between making an individual difference and only doing it through government. And I think obviously one feeds into another. We fortunately have some great folks in office like Paula and many others, but it only helps them if we are more individually aware of all of the issues. And there are just countless things that even the folks that I know that are very good folks are not aware in their day-to-day life, what's affecting the planet and the choices that they make. So this all came to a halt for me when COVID hit. It's not where people's attention was, but Ken is bringing it back to us again, which I'm so glad about. So I'm glad we're all here.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, we have our Forest Preserve Commissioner, Jeff Gahris.
Yes, thank you, Ken. It's a pleasure to be here. I've had a long career with the EPA and state government, working mostly on air pollution. I think in recent years, I became more concerned about climate change. And of course, I've been active with the Sierra Club for a number of years, the local group. And I thought I would retire early from the EPA so I could do some other interesting and important things. So that gave me more time to be involved with the various issues involving clean energy in DuPage County and beyond. More time to lobby people in Springfield or Washington. But and actually, I think everything came to a head when somebody said, "Why don't you run for the Forest Preserve District?" And that created a huge opportunity. So now I'm, as a commissioner, really pushing for sustainability and energy reduction. And we're bringing in solar energy, and I'm supporting Dan Hebert in that effort. And I think you're going to be really excited about the new Willowbrook Wildlife Center and what that will bring. So, and finally, we're actually pursuing for the first time a real sustainability plan. So I'm going to be shepherding that through, making sure it happens. But we have great staff that make me look good, to be honest. But it is exciting to be here and exciting to be part of a process that I think will be moving the county forward.
Thank you. And now I want to just throw this out there, and whoever wants to jump on the bait first can go for it. But it's very important. What is the difference between weather and climate change? Sure, Connie.
We start. It's kind of one word: time. Weather is what's going on now, currently this week, temperature, precipitation, whatnot. Then climate is averages and patterns that we see after years of accumulating data. So, and comparing that data. So that's really the difference.
Did anyone else?
I'm going to let others elaborate if they want to.
Yes.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Connie. Climate change is basically causing the weather events to become more extreme and to be happening more frequently. So that's the difference. Weather happens all the time, but climate change is making them happen much more frequently at a much more terrible effect for what's going on here. So.
True. And another point, climate or day-to-day weather is sort of like rolling of the dice. You have hot days, cold days, etc. But imagine if the weather system is playing with loaded dice, and so the highs get higher and the colds, the low temperatures at night are not as cold, or the cold days are less frequent. And so that variability is shifting toward a different extreme, just in terms of temperature alone. So I think that's an interesting way to look at it.
And I think it's important, and the reason I asked that question, because I know there are folks that are probably going, well, that's a simple thing. But when you get on social media and you read, there are so many folks that get the two confused, are mixed up, and they think, well, climate change isn't real because it's snowing in the middle of December, to which I think, ooh, you don't know the difference between weather and climate change. So I wanted to start there so we have a baseline of what we're talking about. And in your opinion, and I'm going to go to each one of you because it is based on your opinion, what is causing climate change? And Connie, I'll begin with you.
I could just say human activity.
Okay.
And there's a number of things. So I'll, but I do think human activity and since the Industrial Revolution and the vast amount of humans we have on the planet now, we're making a much bigger impact. And there's a lot of details that I'll let other people have some comments about too.
Okay, that's fair. And Paula?
I think it's a combination of burning the fossil fuels, which causes a large chunk of the global emissions, the cutting down of the forests, gas-powered transportation, and greenhouse gas emission blanket, which is now warming the earth by trapping the sun's heat. So all of those combined are making the difference.
Susan?
I agree with everybody. I think Connie summed it up well. And I think most folks are aware of carbon emissions, but to build on what Paula just said, deforestation is huge. And I think a lot of people forget that cattle farming, because of the methane gas involved, is a huge proportion of this. There's such a myriad of activities that contribute.
I agree. And Jeff?
Yeah. Of course, everybody so far has been accurate, 100%. But I'll add one point. I was just reading this book called Drawdown. And that's a reference guide more than anything. And it's very surprising what it says. The number one issue that we need to address is refrigeration, according to this book. So, because when we run air conditioners, there's leaks. Sort of, and that just adds to the because methane. I mean, methane is also leaks, and that's a big issue. It's not necessarily being burned, but it just releases the atmosphere, and it has more global warming potential. But refrigerants do the same thing. They could have several hundred times the amount of impact as 1 pound of CO2. On a pound per pound basis. Refrigerants like HFCs, they're very damaging. So there's actually an international agreement in place to address that. But it's going to take a couple decades to really work that through the system and get rid of these HFCs. But right now, that's the #1 factor, according to this book.
Wow,
Yeah.
Did not know that, so thank you for sharing that. So the goal for all of us here this evening is to learn a little bit more about climate change and really dig into it. And this might once again sound like a silly question, but it's going to be very important. Why is climate change at the rate that we're going such a problem? And I want to phrase that in a way of there are folks, and I was a little surprised by this, that understand that climate change is real, but they don't quite understand why they should care about it. So that's the question I'm asking. And Connie, I'll start with you again.
It's really climate change. We are fortunate here in the Midwest. We are probably one of the safest places with our abundant supply of fresh water, shade, our temperate climate that is here. However, people who live in areas that have been impacted seriously with flooding and loss of fresh water, people are migrating, and because of this, and it is an issue of power and control. And there is a huge amount of concern with the global population, and fresh water and food will be huge because of the climate issues. So that's in my point is the weather becomes more dangerous. Mm-hmm. The weather events are dangerous because of climate change. We will have vast communities of people who are in terrible situations.
Thank you. And Paula.
I just have to add on to what Connie said. The biggest ones are the severe drought and severe storms. I mean, I was just watching on the news last night in Sudan, the rain has fallen so heavy that people are cut off from where they used to live and are basically on an island now and not able to get anywhere. And they're feeding their children and their families water lilies because that's all they can get to.
Wow.
So that is just the beginning of what's happening out there. And yes, we are very safe here. We're doing some things here that we hopefully will change, but it's going to come our way at some point. So I think it's something we really need to take serious. The oceans are warming, they're rising, and species are having a hard time surviving. And so, right now about 23 million people are just displaced because of the weather-related disaster. So it's something we really need to be aware of.
Thank you. And Susan?
A really simple example, but the one that I think everyone can relate to without seeing it, is we had an unusually mild winter. We had that god-awful cold snap in December and another in January, but otherwise, I can't remember a February that nice. So what folks don't realize is when that happens on a consistent basis, it affects the cycles of everything. When something blooms, when something grows, when birds migrate, when insects hatch, and everything is at 6s and 7s because it's all off kilter. Mm-hmm. And that disrupts ecosystems everywhere. It's just off. Migration frames everything. And I will say, like Paula, I saw last night, it was on Nightline, and that was just a shocking story. I'm ashamed to say I didn't know, but South Sudan has essentially become a huge lake with these islands that people are barely getting by on. And now food supplies are disrupted because of fighting in the north, while at the same time in the Horn of Africa, there's a horrendous sustained drought with millions potentially dying of starvation. We're so fortunate to be in this country, but what we've done here and what Europe has done has affected the entire planet. And Paula is right. It's only a matter of time before it comes for us.
Thank you. And Jeff?
Yes, I agree with these points. I think you look around the world, you see a lot of suffering, human suffering as well as nature suffering. And that's going to be getting worse, of course. I think, though, that a lot of people think, well, it's not happening to me right now. So it's on my mind. It's in the back of my mind. It's a worry, but I don't know what to do about it. I'm more worried about feeding my children. But it will be a problem if we start seeing more inflation because of the food, like the corn belt drying up. And the corn is used in a lot of food products, things of that sort. And then the economic disruption that can occur. And the insurance industry is in a crisis mode. In some parts of the United States, you might see, like in Florida, people might decide, oh, my condo is going to be flooding in 20 years, so maybe now is a good time to sell out. And if that, the way real estate markets work is, it doesn't happen gradually, it happens abruptly. And,
Correct.
and you might know this from personal experience, the market's a funny thing. It's all of a sudden, people are taking a bath. And but the big concern, I think, is the inequity of it. Usually it's lower income people that get hurt. Rich people have a way of skating around these issues. They have enough security, enough cushion in their finances. But yeah, it's going to be affecting us in profound ways in the not so distant future.
And could I add something really quickly there?
Sure.
I suspect all of you share this too. I think a common problem with these cascading crises we have right now, the all-out attack on abortion, the staggering gun violence, the racism and homophobia, and I think we're all drowning. And the problem is we become accustomed to it. It's the boiling frog principle, if everybody knows that one. You drop a frog into a pot of boiling water. I hate this analogy, but they pop out. If they're in there slowly, they slowly cook. We are too used to it, even when it's extreme. And just in 2023, it's only April, everybody, right? There was Cyclone Freddie in Mozambique and Madagascar, a month-long cyclone. Took the longest path all the way from Australia to there. Over 400 people died, staggering loss, many more injuries. The hurricane, the tornadoes that have happened in February in this country and in March, killing over 22 people. In this country, we usually have loss of property, not the loss of life, but it's catching up with us too. And everybody watched with astonishment when there was snow in Pasadena. I am reevaluating plans to move to California based on the flooding, the fires, the erratic weather patterns. But we all have a capacity to brush it aside. And I think one of our main pieces of work is to both let people know how bad it is, but to keep them inspired and not be complacent, because we are all too freaking complacent.
And that, Susan, builds a bridge, because I want to bring us up a little bit, because we've kind of explained the issues, and now I want to get into the best part, the solutions. So I want to talk about what small things can we do to help with the environmental crisis, to help and just do our little part. And I just want to add in, I saw a wonderful documentary. I can't remember where it was, on Netflix. And they were talking about how America's use of avocados is causing such a water shortage in South America. We're actually increasing the number of cartels, because the cartels are now involved in the avocado business and the water, and it's a horrible situation. So my little thing that I try to do is I only buy avocados during the on season, just so I'm not contributing to the craziness during the off season. So what can we do? Just little tiny things can we do to help with this? And I'll start with Connie.
Well, all those R's, Kay McKean will tell us, do all the R's, and I'll list some, the whole reduce, reuse, and recycle. Those are the common ones, but repair, repurpose, regift, refill. It is true that living our own little lifestyle, we don't, like you said, Ken, I try not to buy too many bananas. They don't grow around here. It's a long distance to travel to bring to us.
Yes.
Trying to eat local, avoiding, and I don't shop I read a book once, The High Cost of Cheap Fashion. It was a marvelous book, but the top at Target is so cute. But we don't need, there's so much we don't need. And so really trying to live ourselves with a lighter footprint. And truly, I am on a mission, Jeff will tell you, no waste events. I mean, I've got 80 wine glasses. If anyone's having a party, let me know. You can borrow my wine glasses. No, I'm having a second wedding at my house. We had 125 at the first one, and there's going to be about 80 people at this one. And it's going to be a no waste wedding. We're renting chairs and glass dishes and using tablecloths, and it'll be a no waste event. So especially if you don't serve meat. We haven't talked about the whole meat thing, but I will.
We're getting there, Connie.
I do
promise
some
you,
meat,
we're going there.
so I'm rambling, but little things we can do ourselves, but modeling to others as well, so that we can share. So I'll let the others say some good things too. I know they have some ideas.
Thank you. And Paula.
I'm a huge gardener. So one of my big things is to try to slowly get rid of the grass in your yard. Just try to take over and make, native plants be what you turn to. The native plants have the longer roots. They soak up more of the water. They're able to actually be much more better for your environment. And then, of course, buy an electric vehicle. I have not had the chance to do that yet, but 2024 is supposed to be a lot of choice, and they're supposed to be lower in price. And then Argonne is working on the batteries, and right now they're telling us that they last about 300,000 miles now. So I think that's going to be huge in the near future. So those are the ones not so little, but the gardening thing I think is something that everybody could be participating in.
Thank you. And Susan.
So I love all those. And they really are, they sound so small, but you're right, Ken, they're critical. If we start a green team again, I hope we can have people write in and share what they're doing, because there's power in numbers. There's power when we realize what we're all doing together. What I noticed is in the IPCC report, which was the meeting of the UN on climate change in March, and they had recommendations for communities and governments and individuals. And two of them, and you'll probably say more on this, Ken, may seem small, but they're actually two of their biggest recommendations. And the first is to reduce food waste. And composting is so easy no matter where you live. If people have the energy, you can make a hole in the ground in your yard. There's wonderful composters you can buy for outdoors. They compost fast and you can use it right away. There's indoor ones. Where I live, I can't compost. I was going to bring it in to show you. I have a bucket from a company called Our Sustainable Journey. They pick it up on my patio every week. They feed it to worm bins, who gives it to farmers in the LaSalle, Peru area, so they don't use petrochemical-based fertilizer. And the farmers and the land and the worms are all very happy. Compost is not minor. Our waste is huge, and food waste is ridiculous. The other thing they said was, as a few of you just mentioned, meat reduction. The land use, the water use, the methane gas, it's all huge, particularly beef. And there's so many options now, and they just keep getting better. If you do it, please use grass-fed, free range. Impossible Burger is really, really good. There's many others that are very good. Being a vegetarian and a vegan is very good, whatever spectrum you can be on. But I think in so many ways, we have to become conscious of, I'm sorry to say it, but virtually every single thing we do, because nothing about the way we live is sustainable. It's kind of terrifying, but it's not. I buy organic cotton sheets, and I'll shut up with this one. The reason? Cotton is one of the biggest herbicide and pesticide users crops, next to tobacco. It's part of what's destroyed the Mississippi Delta. And if you think about where you spend most of your time, it's in bed. There aren't many places you spend 8 hours a day wrapping yourself in pesticide, unbeknownst to you. Each thing we do matters.
Thank you
I'm
for
done.
that imagery, Susan. That was, can't wait to go to bed tonight.
I'm sorry. Wash them a bunch if they're not organic cotton.
Thanks a lot. Jeff.
Oh, my colleagues make it easy. Being last, I don't have to sweat all the little details, but a couple of thoughts. One is, yeah, I think a lot of people say I'm doing something, they do a little thing and they think they can stop. Like I got an email from an organization saying you can do things like dim your TV. I'm thinking, okay, if that's the level at which we're doing things, not much will get done. But I think one powerful thing we could do that seems simple and easy, although in some ways it isn't, that is to talk to people about stuff, talk to people about climate change, and then turn around and ask, what do you think? And then actually listen to what the other person has to say, because they have anxieties, and it's not necessarily, well, they might say they don't believe in climate change, but that's not the real source of their anxiety. Their source of anxiety is, well, you're going to take away my job that depends on fossil fuels, or you're going to take away my meat. You know, it turns into political slogans. But I think even just amongst ourselves, you know, I think this is a forum for Democrats. So next time you see an elected official that you helped elect, ask them what they're doing, what bill they're working on that makes a political difference and a policy difference in the state of Illinois and beyond. So I think that's a very powerful but simple thing we could do.
Thank you. And I want to, my next question is something we've all kind of touched on, and I want to bring it home, is trying to think of the way to articulate this. We've spoken about the things we can do. We've spoken about climate change. Something that Connie and Susan have both mentioned is the beef industry and the gases. And Susan and I have had lunch many times at one of my favorite vegan restaurants. And the problem that we run into is when climate change really takes hold and gets us to a very bad place, which could happen, is going to impact lower income people the worst. We all can agree on that. The problem, however, is that it is harder for lower income folks to really jump on the bandwagon on some of these things. For example, I love the Impossible Burgers. A box of those are, a box I think is 8 patties is about $17. A box of beef patties, however, are super, super inexpensive and you get so much more. So my question is, what can we do collectively or singularly to make it so that when we are talking about climate change, we are not accidentally leaving out lower income folks that simply can't afford to do some of the things that maybe we can? And because Jeff has had it easy all night, I'm going to start with you, Jeff, and then work my way back up.
I think it's a question we should ask our policymakers, because it's on them in many ways, and then they need to have our backs when the going gets tough, because there's some tough political issues with this. It has to do with, I think number one, we have a growing disparity between rich and poor. The income levels are, I mean, they're out of whack. It's the worst it's been in 100 years in our country, and that by itself is a huge problem that we need to figure out a way to address. It's the economic system that we're all trying to wrestle with here. It's out of whack, but and I think there are some attempts to sort of address that, you know, with environmental justice programs at different levels of government, you know, and environmental groups pushing for that. And there's another thought I had. Well, I think one example is the Illinois Solar Energy Program has a solar for all component. So if you are a lower income person, you can qualify for solar energy, and there's better incentives for that. And it's not as big of a program as I think it should be. But if you go to Glendale Heights, for instance, there are a lot of houses there that are in moderate income neighborhoods that have solar on them. You wonder, well, how did they afford that? Well, they didn't have to buy them outright. They're probably got a leasing agreement with an installer. And so there's ways around this. And if we talk to people about it and educate people, things like percolate upward, and we realize, well, here's a solution here, and here's another solution there. And we just have to be aware of the fact that not everybody's in the same place economically. We got to figure that, you know, we just have to be very sensitive to that.
Thank you. And Susan, thoughts?
I love that question, Ken, because again, when there's loss of life, who is it more than poor people, people of color, women, and children that suffer? And I think Jeff touched on this. It's so hard to summarize, but I think in this country, dark money is still so much of what we're dealing with. And even though we're all Democrats in this time and day and age, I don't really want to divide. Boy, if Republicans got green again, I'd be thrilled. But in the meanwhile, we really do need to support our candidates. And all over the place, I was watching, and I don't know what it was on, Marcus Flowers, who ran against Marjorie Taylor Greene, has started a PAC together with Olivia Troy, who's Republican, and Denver Riggleman, to try to get Marcus Flowers' district is not a wealthy district. What should have been his district is not wealthy. To try to get into these areas and reach people and address these issues. And I think all of us need to think about supporting those folks, as well as organizations that really need our help. Who would think that Southern Poverty Law Center might be an organization to help with climate change or fighting the NRA? I cringe to ask people to spend more money. I'm not wealthy. Many have struggled with inflation. Certainly the poor cannot give. But I thought that President Zelensky made an excellent point when he addressed Congress, and he said, I don't want you to think of your dollars as charity. I want you to think of them as an investment. And I think for everyone who gives to an environmental organization and an organization supporting the poor and the folks that we have the hardest time getting to, that's, I think, honestly, a better investment than your 401k right now because of what is going to meet us down the road. Who knows what's going to happen with the banking industry? We all need to be investing in protecting those folks and saving the planet as a whole.
Thank you. And Paula?
Well, I feel a little pressure here because I am the elected official.
We're glad for it.
Oh, thank you. The one thing that I thought that was very interesting when I started my first term last time was that I had a meeting with the staff, and in the code books, they didn't have anything that actually pertained to solar arrays. They didn't have anything in code books that pertained to electric vehicles. So there was nothing anyone could look at to actually get that into their houses. Now they are in our code books. We've changed that, and we're trying to fight so that any new construction, any new buildings has all new sustainable things into it. So, you know, we're going to, new homes are going to have EV chargers as something that's going to be put in there. So it's making those little changes so that when everybody is on the same level buying now, because it will be a part of the starter home. Is so when you go in, you can have a chance at that. So that's one thing we can do. One of my other hats that I wear is I'm chair of the food pantry garden in Lyle Township, and we're talking about people who are struggling for food and everything due to the changes in the inflation as well as the environmental changes. And I've seen the numbers go up and up and up. So it's been a really big issue. So, you know, my suggestion is if you don't have a lot of time or a lot of money to help, you can do a community garden. You can do something easy like that so you can help people with fresh produce, because getting fresh produce to people every day is really, really important. It makes people healthier. It makes people be able to work better. And I just can't say enough about that little bit doing that much for your neighborhood.
Thank you. And Connie?
Okay. I want to see, we have a lot of elected officials on here today. I mean, Rex Irby just got elected, Tina, Paula, and a lot of this.
Yeah, sorry.
Jeff. Yeah, Jeff, of course. And a lot of this, it's so, this whole being involved in the process of our government is so vitally important. I also want to recognize Frank Merritt because he has joined me in the CR Club, and we have a very stringent vetting process in which we question and endorse candidates. And those of you who have been through it know it's not a slam dunk. We question you vigorously, and Frank engages in that conversation with the first question and introduction of himself of, I am here for climate change. And that is his reason for being involved in vetting candidates and determining whether or not we're going to endorse them. And then if the Sierra Club does endorse you, we get out and stomp for you as hard as we can to help you get elected. And then if you get elected, we knock on your door with the priority policies that we think are going to make a difference, not just for the environment, but for environmental justice for all people. So that process, I think, I'm hoping that is probably one of the most serious things that the Sierra Club does. I mean, we take people on outings and get you to enjoy the outdoors, but helping to encourage and get good people in our government offices who will make decisions, who will help provide for a good environment for all of us to be living in. It's vitally important. And I appreciate all you elected officials so very much, because it's a huge time commitment. And I appreciate the party that comes out and supports them. And just a little aside, I know I don't want anyone to stone me. I'm glad we're on. We did endorse a Republican, and it was a person who did had some good support for things that we were doing with the Forest Preserve District. And I'm really proud of that. I think it's really important that we just need good candidates all around. And I only one, but there was one.
Well, don't worry, Connie. No one is getting stoned today. That was yesterday. Oh goodness. So I want to round us out with I usually do a fun question so this is kind of a fun question, kind of a serious one. Tomorrow is April 22nd, which is Earth Day. And if you could share just a little tidbit of something for someone about the environment, something that might help them, I would like you to share that with us, and I'll go first. Something I learned is that going into nature for just 10 minutes a day on a nice day actually makes people happier. Little sunshine, a little fresh air, freshly cut grass. It does something to the brain because we are not meant to be indoors as much as most of us are indoors. So my little tip is, if you can, if it's not freezing, just step outside for 10 minutes and you just do whatever you want, but just get outside and it makes you a little bit happier. So Connie, I'll let you go first. What is your tidbit?
I am so vehemently opposed to plastics, and only 5% of plastics really do get recycled. So lead by example, bring a reusable container of some sort with you. Thank you for drinking. Do it in your meetings. Don't use plastic water bottles. The expectation is that this is how we nourish ourselves, is with better packaging and whatnot. It drives me crazy.
I agree. Especially leaving those plastics in the car and then drinking them again. It does bad things to the human cells.
My pastor used to have a water bottle, and I've talked to him like 3 or 4 times. He's like, I got my coffee cup. I got my usable mug here.
Yes, not good. And Paula, what is your tidbit?
I am married to the Recycle King. And so we really recycle here. Matter of fact, I just got back from the sign recycling event. So, I mean, if that's the least you can do is recycle the signs. But our house has boxes for everything, and everything's being recycled. It always has someplace to go, from the pill bottles to the electronics to everything. So, to the bread tags, which all, scarce takes, which then goes to wheelchairs. So, everything can be recycled. And if you think it can't, I don't want you to make you a wish cycle, because some things can't, but a lot can. And so really check out what you can recycle and do that, because it will make you happy and my husband happy. So, and myself.
And Susan, what is your tidbit?
I'm going to build on a few things you said, Ken. Having been a social worker in inner city Chicago and being aware of, in our city, vast food deserts and toxic places that they wouldn't put on the north side. And also the power of being in nature. I remember I was in the car going to see a client in Cabrini Green when they announced a study from University of Illinois that there was actually less violence in the areas of the projects where they were looking out on parks and trees than there were in other areas. Actually documented. And I will just say to everyone, there's so many ways to plant a tree. I think everybody here knows that, but there's the UN 100 billion tree project. I love Tree Sisters. You can plant a tree for 50 cents, and they do it to support women in the most deforested tropical areas for 50 cents. My God, let's all do this.
I like that. And how could we do that if we were interested? Do you have a website?
Treesisters.org.
Treesisters.org. Thank you. And Jeff, what is your tidbit?
Well, I think over the next few days, there's going to be a lot of environmental events. I suggest people go to one of those and they can pick up all the tidbits they can absorb in one outing. Tomorrow, I'm actually going to be with Michael Childress. I think when you were talking, Ken, he was trying to reach me on my phone to do a little litter pickup at the edge of one of our forest reserves. And he's a District 1 County Board member. And so it'd be kind of fun to go out with another elected official to do a small tidbit instead of dealing with all the big stuff. But just, it feels good to get outside and then do something while you're there. A little small act of goodness, even if it's just picking up litter. I think a lot of people do that because it just makes them feel good. Because you need to enjoy this trip because it's going to be tough to deal with issues that we're dealing with, and just to find ways to have fun along the way and enjoy camaraderie with other like-minded people, have a conversation with somebody who's not like-minded and find it rewarding. I think we got to do that stuff along the way. So, and one final plug, the Prairie Food Co-op is this simple act. You can become an owner of the Prairie Food Co-op to support local food, the farmers, and that'll be an up-and-coming store. That'll be hopefully open for the end of the year. So
if you are in York Township on the 29th, starting at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, you are able to help with a cleanup day at the Great Western Trail. So April 29th, if you're free at 11 a.m., cleanup day in York Township on the Great Western Trail, meeting at Edgewood and St. Charles Place. That is Edgewood and St. Charles Place. Thank you, Tina. So I want to thank everyone for joining for this conversation. Big thank you to Connie Schmidt, Paula Deacon Garcia, Susan Francis, and Jeff Gahris for your insight and your knowledge and your wisdom. Thank you all for the lively conversations, Rex and Tina and Martin and those in our chat box. And once again, keep and always remember, we have to take care of planet Earth. We have to love it because we can't leave it. Not just yet.
I would like to make a comment before we're all off. This topic is my passion. And I just finished reading Greta Thunberg's book. You might remember her. She was the young girl who was passionate and got world recognition for climate. Well, the book is called The Climate Book. And it addresses 99% of the issues we touched on tonight. But she has compiled using more than 100 experts in every field. And what I would like to do, if this somehow could be arranged, if you can get people interested in reading this, because you will be shocked. Every action we take is good. It's better than not, but you will be shocked when you read what's in here about where we're headed and how soon we're headed there. And it gets into moral issues. It gets into immigration issues. It gets into discrimination issues. And it at the end, it tells you, gives you suggestions about what you can do. But these little things that we can do they're good, but they're not going to make a dent really in what has to be done. And I think because a few people talked about it, we're in, probably everybody on this call is in a fairly good financial situation, at least compared to Sudan, So
Absolutely.
I think to solve this problem, we are going to have to pay more because we've got to take care of the people who are affected. And when you read this book, you'll see how we caused some of the problems, the industrialized nations, with our consumerism. So it's very eye-opening. And I would love it if anybody who reads it wants to dialogue with me about it and give me some feedback as to whether you were surprised by it. Did you get more ideas? Because this is what I spend my time on now, to the point where I do support the, the Sierra Club, and also the NRDC, the National, what does it stand for? I don't even know.
National Resources Defense Council.
Yes, right. And, I gave them money, and then they told me about the toilet paper crisis, and they're cutting down all these trees in northern Russia to make toilet paper and paper towels. So they probably in one of their things told me they did give a list of the real offenders, the companies with the toilet paper. And so I called that company and I said, listen, I give to this organization. They're telling me this is what you're doing. And I will say I'm not going to say it was Procter & Gamble, but it was a well-recognized company. I don't even remember what the company was now. But the woman was very nice. She said, I'll get back to you. And she did get back to me, and I was a lawyer in my other life, and she gave the legal answer, like, we do everything that we have to do. So I went back to NRDC, and I said, this is the answer they gave me. And then NRDC sent me I said, how'd you come up with accusing them basically of this? And they sent me everything they based it on. So I called the company back and I said, this is what you told me, but I want to tell you, I'm a shareholder and I don't want to make more profit. I want you not to cut down trees to make toilet paper. That's not going to sustain this environment. So anyway, if anybody, you can tell I like this topic. I mean, I'm very interested in this topic. I'm listening to a movie through the Catholic Church this weekend, somebody told me about it, something the Pope has said, and it's all on the environment. And then we're going to dialogue with people 2 days next week on that. But it's called The Climate Book by this Greta, and it just came out a few months ago. It'll put it all together, all these little things we talked about. I don't buy books. This is a library book that's due back tomorrow, but somebody had given me a gift card for Barnes & Noble, and I've had it for a couple of years, and I'm going to buy this tomorrow because it's really like a Bible of things we can do. So
thank you for sharing that, Anne Marie. I appreciate that. And we have to check out the book now.
Yes, I hope you do.
Yes, we have to check it out. All right. We have to wrap up because my editor gets very upset when we go over 50 minutes. So you don't want to make the editor mad. Thank you all so much for joining. This has been a pleasure. We have a lot of reading to do, a lot of learning to do. So thank you all for your time and have a wonderful weekend and a happy Earth Day.
Thanks for doing this, Ken.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.